Hello, everyone. Good evening. We're going to meet one more speaker of Poliglotar 2021, and this is Madeleine Kelly. Hello, Madeleine.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. And you?
Good.
So we're here to know you a little better. Where are you from, and what do you do for a living?
I'm from a place called Pembroke, Ontario, and for a living, I both run track and field and I am a journalist.
Okay. So you studied journalism at college?
No, actually, I didn't. I studied English and anthropology, and then honestly, for the journalism job, I was kind of just in the right place at the right time. Yeah.
So what were you planning to work with when you studied English?
I didn't know. I was really focused on track and field in university, and I knew I liked reading and writing. And so that's why I studied English, but I did not have a concrete plan for what came after my undergraduate degree. That was in flux. And honestly, I got a little bit lucky finding a career right away.
Okay, so you have been working with English and other languages as well, or what?
I did I did French immersion all through school, like all through elementary and high school, and then I took one Italian class in university, and that's the end of my language acquisition beyond English. But the French is in my brain still. It's kind of deep in my brain, but my comprehension's good. My speaking's not good anymore.
Don't you practice French sometimes?
Almost never. Like it's really on a need to know basis. So if I'm in France or Quebec or a very French speaking place, I'll use it and I can read no problem. But in terms of my oral French, I almost never use it unless I have to, which is bad. But I honestly I'm just kind of self-conscious of my oral French.
Yeah, so we hear that Canada is a bilingual country, but not all people there are bilingual, right?
Yeah, no, I would say, I mean, I don't have the official statistic on it, but I would say far less than half are genuinely bilingual. But most people can hack some French. Yeah.
Okay, so what are you going to talk about at Polyglot this year?
I will be talking about the importance of mastering your first language. Journalism is a lot like interpretation and translation. I think in the way that you are telling someone else's story, right? And so with interpretation and translation, you're telling it verbatim. I get to craft it a little bit more, but it's very important to be able to get the essence of what someone is feeling and saying across. And it's impossible to do that unless you have a very good handle on the language that they're speaking and that you are speaking.
Okay, so how to use our native language as a working tool to
Mhm.
understand the world, right?
Yeah.
And what do you write in your job?
Mostly sports stories. So I've done a few opinion pieces in some national publications, but mostly I'm writing about running. And running is sort of the conduit for what I'm talking about, but then really ultimately what we're just talking about is people, right? So running is how we come together, but their stories go way beyond that. I've talked about, things like substance abuse and mental health and like families growing apart and then reconciling, and all of that can come to light under the umbrella of sport. But we all know that sports ends up being a metaphor for a whole lot more.
Yeah, and so you are also a professional runner, right?
Yeah.
And you went to the Olympics this year.
Yes, I did.
Are you going to talk a little bit about it in your presentation?
Yeah, I can. It's See, the Olympics were funny this year, and I think I would have had a different experience in other years, but just because of COVID, um, there wasn't that much intermingling
Mm.
between the countries. So when it comes to, like I would hear other languages in passing, but when it comes to like actually, interacting with people who spoke a different language than me, I didn't actually have that many experiences like that, because we were actually discouraged kind of from meeting
Mhm.
other people because of contact tracing. So I primarily just interacted with Canadians, unfortunately, but I think that was just unique to this year's Olympic experience.
Not even if you were using masks, you could not have lunch together or dinner with other people. No.
So we ate all of our meals behind plexiglass.
Mm.
So you couldn't really hear what someone else was saying. So like if you're already not, fluent in the same language and you can't really hear them, it's really hard to have, like a conversation of substance.
Yeah, okay. So let's see if people here have some questions for you to know you better. João Paulo, perhaps. Patricia, I don't know. Patricia is coming to Fortaleza this year.
Yeah, well, Juliano, well, it's not a question because I know Maddie really well. She's been in our lives for the last, 4 years, Maddie, now that you've been going out with Jeremy. Okay.
You know each
So-
other since 4 years ago?
Well, it was 4 years ago that you guys started going out, right? Yeah. You're
Yeah.
gonna have your fourth wedding, your fourth anniversary soon.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So well, maybe you could mention the fact that you also have a podcast talking about sports, right? And that you write art. You are still working for the Canadian Running magazine. Is that correct? Yeah. And then you write articles online for them.
Not really online anymore, mostly like in the like in print now in the magazine. But yeah, I'm still, like, the podcast is language. It's a funny medium where you just are kind of like speaking in your bedroom and then a bunch of people hear it. But it's that I do that as well on a bi-weekly basis.
Can you tell maybe Julian and the others who is the other person that you do the podcast with, and how she also went to the Olympics with you and what you talk about during it?
Yeah, so we do essentially like a news highlight reel of like from the world of track and field and road running. And my co-host is a woman named Kate, and she's been, a Canadian national record holder at multiple events, but yeah, she made the Olympics with me as well this year, her first Olympics. So that was really exciting that both of us were in Tokyo.
And maybe Mary mentioned, sorry, I was just, if someone else has
you
a
are
question,
the interviewer now. Okay.
I have this habit of talking too much, and especially if I know the person, the interviewee. But the fact that the fact that you made the Olympics and that you are a sports writer, I think that was very beneficial to your career, right? Maybe you can mention the opportunities that opened up
What's
to
the
you.
difference between a journalist that writes about sports who is not a sportist like you? What's the difference?
Yeah, and if you are an athlete, what's the difference exactly? And I mentioned to them about the RBC program that you're doing now because you made it to the Olympics, right?
So yeah, one of the like the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, is probably like the biggest media conglomerate in Canada, and it's like federally funded. And so I was asked to go on a national radio show to talk about how the pandemic was taking a toll on Canadian athletes. And I was found for that because of one of my results at an American meet. So I was out of the country, and that's how they found me. And then from there, I was asked to write about it in the Toronto Star, which is also like a nationally circulated newspaper. And then that led to a relationship with the sports editor at the Toronto Star, and they've brought me back to write several other things. So there are certainly sports journalists that are more broadly qualified than I am in terms of their like education and experience with, a variety of sports. But when it comes to running or Olympic sport, I have this niche understanding, this unique capability that's led me to get these jobs that, I mean, technically based on my resume alone, I shouldn't have. But just due to the fact that I had this firsthand experience, it made me, the more successful applicant.
Yeah, this experience is your resume as well, right?
Yeah.
So, João Paulo, please.
João Paulo has a question?
Yes, I
Oh,
think
he's
so.
got, yeah, his hand is
Oi,
raised.
boa noite. Meu nome é João Paulo, moro aqui em Fortaleza,
Oh,
no
just a
Ceará.
second, João
I
Paulo.
think,
Maddie does,
yeah, we
Maddie
did
does
not explain Maddie that maybe she could select the English channel here.
Shame on you,
Yeah.
Juliano.
just a second. So, yeah, Julian
Yeah, so
explained to
let's
Maddie.
make like Gabriela, or I don't know, because we did not organize the booth correctly.
Okay, Gabriela
Yeah, so
will do
Gabriela
it.
can make from Portuguese to English. Okay.
So, Maddie, if you click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen, and you'll be able to hear Gabriela interpreting for you from
Portuguese to
Portuguese
English,
into
yeah.
English. So you'll
Because
be able
that's
to
how
understand.
it's going to work in the
Eu
conference.
tô
We're going
ocupado.
to explain this in the beginning. I forgot
Yeah.
today. Okay.
So I select English.
Yeah.
Yeah, you select English when João Paulo is going to ask you a
No,
question.
you
now.
select English and be there forever. That's
Oh,
it.
that's right. You should select English. Yes. Okay,
Okay.
so go ahead, João Paulo. João Paulo.
Ok,
Bom.
então. Ok, vocês estão me ouvindo? Bom, meu nome é João Paulo. Bom, eu, na verdade, trabalho como intérprete e tradutor, né, de português, inglês, italiano, espanhol. Mas hoje eu quero ser apenas um simples participante, né, e fazer a minha pergunta no meu idioma nativo, até porque estou adorando a interpretação da Gabriela e espero que a Madeleine, a Mad, com sotaque bem brasileiro, a Mad também vai adorar a interpretação em inglês da minha pergunta. Eu sempre, bom, agora eu vou à minha pergunta, né, propriamente dita. Eu sempre fico muito curioso quando eu vejo atletas de alto nível que também desenvolvem uma atividade intelectual de alto nível. Então, eu queria perguntar para a Mad qual é o desafio fisiológico, orgânico, né, de se desenvolver duas atividades complexas e de alto nível, seja esportiva, seja intelectual. Queria ouvir um pouco sobre isso. Obrigado, Mad, parabéns. Você é inspiração para todos nós.
Thank you. I mean, I would say it's actually when you're at an elite level of sport, you're kind of discouraged from, or historically, you've been discouraged from pursuing other things. There is certainly this culture of like a singular focus on sport, and you're discouraged from pursuing things beyond, maybe people go to school, that's sort of been accepted, but in terms of employment outside of sport, that's been discouraged because it's seen as a detractor from your performance. But I never had made a national team or received national team funding until 2020. So because of that, I had to have a job because I had graduated university and I couldn't support myself with my running because I wasn't being paid anything. So I had to get a job. And so I got one. And, at the time it was very challenging to work a full-time job and also, pursue sport at the level that I was pursuing it at. But in retrospect, I'm so thankful for that because it gave me these two unique skills that I've made work together. But I think I wouldn't have necessarily had that experience if I had received funding from the beginning because I would have been paid to do my sport and I wouldn't have needed other employment. So I think you see lots of athletes with, sort of like only athletic skill because no one's ever asked them to do anything else. But I didn't have a choice. So I had to, acquire both skills at the same time.
So in that sense, you are professionally bilingual.
I am professionally bilingual. Yeah, sure.
Also, Maddie, yeah, that first job that you mentioned that you had to do to survive, it was in Toronto at the shoe store selling running shoes, right?
Yeah.
And another benefit from it is that you met Jeremy, my son. He was working at the same store.
Yeah.
And one day you got those shoes and started running forever.
I was already running, but they gave me some shoes too, which was helpful. Yeah.
And what about some athletes that start as athletes and then they have to retire because maybe the athletic career is short? And how do they find jobs? Is it difficult for them?
It is in some cases. And that's actually like an area of focus right now in Canada, because they're finding that a lot of people, like Olympians, you know, are having a really hard time launching we'll call it second phases of their careers, like of their professional careers. And so there have been a few programs put in place, and I'm actually in one of them, which is great. It's so RBC, the Royal Bank of Canada, is a major financial institution here, and they select 50 Olympians every year and they employ them at the bank. And it's a 2-year contract. And at the end of the contract, if you do a good job, you can get a job, like a full-time job. So that is a very cool program that's only like 4 years it's been running. And I think that things like that, where you can have work experience, but there's still the understanding that your sport is a priority, is key, because I think so many people leave sport and they've been told to think of nothing but their athletics. And then they're just kind of hung out to dry and they're confused about what comes next, because their whole lives they've been an athlete and they haven't developed any other skill set.
Yeah. So let's see if someone else has a question. Otherwise, we could end the interview here. Do we have more questions, people? I don't know. Maybe I'm going to end interpretation anyway, and I'm going to end it now and see if Gabriela or Michael have questions.
Mhm.
Alguien tiene una pregunta.
Okay. Do you have questions, Gabriela, Michael? I don't know.
Maddie, I would like to know, when did you start running?
I did it in school, like kind of as like for fun. I would say I started running more seriously probably in like grade 11.
Okay, that would be
like 16.
okay.
16
great,
years
excellent,
old.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Nice, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting
Gabriela is
story.
also, I think, a ballerina or something like that.
Yeah, I dance, but I started dancing some years ago, actually. Not in my adolescence, in my teenage years, no.
Oh, that's cool. I did ballet when I was really young, like 3-4 years old, but I wasn't very
Wow.
good. But I thought it was fun.
And I think it's important, the thing that you mentioned about the mental health. This is something so important, especially for us, translators and interpreters. Sometimes we neglect this side of our lives, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very recent subject as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's for sure. It's gaining a lot more attention in Canada. Like
Yes.
on the national teams now, for the first time ever, we have mental health practitioners, and we just didn't before. And when you know, now that we're understanding what a big part of it is of our holistic health, like that was a huge gap.
Yeah, this year in the Olympics, we had the American gymnast that had
Simone Biles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She had depression or something like that, and this was a focus, like mental health in sports.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
I just want to say a couple of things. Gabriela, one thing to Gabriela, I love your voice. It's so soft. And you hardly ever, you don't even have any accent. Your English is perfect too. Yeah. And I just want to
Her
say
French
to,
is better, actually, right?
oui, c'est vrai. Oh,
Actually, je fais aussi en français,
oh, très
portugais, mais je
bien.
fais pas français, anglais, non.
Oh,
Pas
ok.
encore.
Pas encore. Ok, très bien. And I just want to let Maddie know how, and everyone, how lucky I am to have her around, not just because she's a great person, but because she is so mature. She's only 25, but like she is so mature. And also because she's a bookworm. She's always reading. That's why she has such a great vocabulary. She keeps giving me books or lending me books. And like even in this little speech she made, she used a word that I had to look it up. She said, conduit. Running is the conduit, which is also French. Conduit, yeah, conduit is how you pronounce it. I had to look it up. In Portuguese, it's o veículo, o canal. Yeah, and her whole family is like that. We were together for Thanksgiving, and I learned a word with her father. He keeps throwing those funny words. He
Maybe
said,
conduit is a very common word in Canada, and you just don't
"Is
know.
it, Maddie? Is it? I don't know if it's not very common. No, but anyways, her father likes to use those words all the time. So I should start making a list of the words I learned with him. So he said something like, someone the first time they met my son, they thought my son was highfalutin. Do you know what highfalutin is, Juliana?
No.
Or
I
anybody?
didn't know this word either. It's my great uncle said it. He's in his 80s. I think it's an antiquated word that we don't really use anymore, but
What
I
does
know
it
what it
mean?
means now because
Okay.
of him, but
Oh, okay. So what does it mean, Mary? Can you explain?
kind of snobby, honestly.
Yeah.
A little.
Yeah.
But it's just because he went to kind of a fancy university.
Yeah. So for me, as a translator, even though I do more interpretation now than translation, it's great to have someone like Mary around, because I feel if I'm in doubt about something, and I may have asked her a few times already, Mary, does it sound okay to someone who is a native speaker of English? How would you say that? And I'm sure I'll always get a good answer from her. So it's great to have her around for that reason alone, but for many more.
That's great. Thank you very much. Teresa, Maddie, Michael, Gabriela, João Paulo, and Patricia for being here. And we see each other again in 2 weeks and a half, I think, at Poliglotar, okay?
Okay, November 6th will be a 120 here in Canada, right?
120 in Canada.
In Canada, yeah. Okay, I'll see Maddie before that. Okay.
She's
She's only 1
She
hour
doesn't
away
run
from
from
me.
you.
No, we can't run to each other's houses. It's 1 hour by car, so we have to drive.
Not running, huh?
All right.
Okay,
bye everyone. Thank
So-
you. Nice to meet you, Maddie.
So
Thank
just to finish with a cliche, run, Madeleine, run.